We definitely I think we used the tight ends a little bit more than we were thinking going into the day. But I think they were, like I said earlier, the DB's probably the best I've seen all spring so far. Just as a group, and they were just they did great just playing our receivers. Just they're playing tight, but it just kind of opened up the tight end game. They weren't covering them sometimes, and you saw a lot of times they were funneling to Antonio, and Banks would come wide open, and same thing with Jake. So. Just trying to ID that and find that and just find the open guys.
And we're back with TigerNet Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Golden, here with David Hood. David, it feels like it's been forever. It's really only been a few months since the Orange Bowl, but we're back talking football finally.
Yeah, and we were able to go through all of spring practice and then the spring game. And, to me, it's more about what happened in spring practice than necessarily the spring game, which is just a scrimmage. But there's been a lot of topics to cover, whether it's Brad Brownell being retained in basketball, softball winning a whole lot of games, baseball starting off rough, finding their way now. And then, by the way, Garrett Riley installing the new air raid offense at Clemson. And just a lot of things going on. It's a lot of fun right now.
So we'll get going. We'll talk about the spring game. It was this last Saturday. The White won 20-13, and some good, some bad. It was a spring game. I think that you're never going to see a great performance all around from the whole team on spring game. It's a lot of learning. But what were your thoughts on the spring game?
Yeah, the defense is going to be really good. When you look at how they have improved in the secondary, that safety group, which I don't think that Tyler Venables played, but you look at how much those safeties have improved. RJ Mickens is probably going to turn himself into an all ACC caliber player at some point. You look at how well the corners play. Nate Wiggins is another all conference kind of a guy. Sheridan Jones didn't even play. He's another one that's going to be really good. Toriano Pride coming along. They've got some injured guys that are going to come back and go, man, that secondary may now be a strength of this team next year. And, of course, we know how the linebackers are. They're, Barrett Carter, Jeremiah Trotter. I mean, come on. And then you add Wade Woodaz in there. Unbelievable. I was standing beside Wade the other day after practice, and it's the same question I asked tight end Jake Brenningstool. I said, have you grown? Because I spend time around these guys, and I was standing next to him, and he goes, yeah. And he's almost 6'4", 225, can play linebacker, can play safety, can play the nickel if he needs to. They've actually been cross-training him at a lot of linebacker spots. Excuse me. And my guess is that they are getting him ready for maybe Barrett Carter leaving for the NFL after this year, and Wade will move, a little bit more back inside, getting him ready to do that. What can you say about the linebackers? Jamal Anderson Jr., a freshman, had a tipped ball that turned into an interception by RJ Mickens. TJ Dudley, a redshirt freshman, playing really well. I mean, you sit there and you go, man, these guys have speed to burn. And then, by the way, number 11, not Brian Bresee, Peter Woods. My goodness. I've seen it all spring. I've heard it all spring. There was one play there, and I don't want to call out the offensive lineman by name, but Peter Woods came out of his stance and basically used one arm to throw the offensive lineman to the ground. And flushes Clay Klubnik out of the pocket, and you're like, what did I just see? And that's just what people have seen all year long. So defensively, really like it. Offensively, hard to get a true grasp on things. 7 scholarship receivers that will be there in August, not there. They tried to make it good for Cade Klubnik and put Cole Turner and Brandon Spector and Antonio Williams on his team, but he was missing 4 starting offensive linemen that he had from last year, and he was missing Will Shipley, missing all those wide receivers. So a little hard to tell offensively. And then I tried to tell people, some people on our board just got angry because somebody suggested, that Clemson was very vanilla. What would we have to hold back from Duke? What are we trying to, we've sucked the past 2 years in the spring game, and we've sucked in the seasons, and now we're going to suck again. It's like, here we go. We just get angry about things. And I go, well, I didn't see really many 4-wide sets. I didn't see any 5-wide sets. I didn't see any 2-back sets. Didn't see a lot of motion. Didn't see a lot of orbit motion. Didn't see a lot of formational shifting. Yes, it was very vanilla. And as Kay Klubnik told me after the game, we did what we could with what we had. And I think that tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing, is that you really didn't have a lot of the wide receivers. You didn't have a lot of the line. And as you and I have talked about, Clemson does not like to show their hand early. I mean, I don't expect to fully see the Garrett Riley offense take off until about 4 games in, because I think in the deep game, in the early games, if Clemson doesn't have to show a lot, if Clemson can kind of pound and ground and win the game 28-0, I think they're going to do that, because that's how Dabo and the Clemson machine is. It's you win, you don't show things until you have to, and I think that's going to be exactly what we see. Everybody knows that, week 4, I think the big game with Florida State is going to essentially be the quote unquote divisional championship, now that we don't have divisions. But yeah, so I think this was exactly what I expected. I expected to see some changes. I expected to see the up tempo, which we saw, but I didn't expect them to put anything on film, and that's exactly what we got.
Yeah, I'll tell you what we've heard a lot in camp is a lot of outside zone runs, a lot of sweeps, a lot of that 2-back set. And because you had Phil Moffitt and a bunch of guys that haven't played a whole lot, we saw none of that. And somebody really close to the program told me after the game, yeah, we didn't see any of that. And I'm just telling you, this offense is going to go for 200 rushing yards a game, and they saw none of it Saturday. So, typical kind of a scrimmage deal. And to me, again, I kind of take less from what I saw in the scrimmage and take more from what we learned all during the spring. Even though, did you see Jake Brenningstool with that kind of pop pass catch over the middle, and then he had that first down catch over on the sideline? That's another one that I stood next to him a couple of weeks ago, and I said, have you grown? And he's like, yeah, 6'7", 235. Mercy.
That's a big target.
It's a huge target, and he's learning to block, and he's trying to become a complete player. And that's another guy that could have just an absolutely monster season. And, here's what I did love too. We saw the middle of the field being used.
Yes.
Incredible. How long have we been just begging for that? And you and I've covered this before. I think it's really funny. Remember when Clemson went up to North Carolina to play and played in that game where, I guess it was Skalski and maybe Xavier Thomas made the stop on the 2-point conversion to allow Clemson to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back and looked at that game, and I saw how North Carolina was basically leaving the middle of the field wide open. And Clemson used it twice. And I wrote a story about it, and I showed that through the first, 3 or 4 games that year, Clemson had thrown 9 passes to the middle of the field. And I would get the coach speak of, well, we're just taking what the defenses give us. We're just taking what the defenses give us. And you go back and you look and you go, man, North Carolina's like, hey, middle's open. You can throw it here if you want to, but we're going to cover the outside because that's where you throw it. And there was almost a stubbornness there. And I wrote a story about the percentages. And for a game or two after that bye week, the bye week was the next week, or the open date. And after that, middle of the field was kind of used, but then it went back out to the outsides again. And that's what we've seen for a few years. And to hear Garrett Riley talk about it, to hear Kay Klubnik talk about it, to hear Jake Brenningstool talk about it, hey, the middle of the field is going to be a big part of this offense. And then to actually see that Saturday, I love it. I love it.
And to go back that 2019 North Carolina game, that shows that was not a Brandon Streeter problem. That was not a DJ Uiagalelei problem. That was Trevor Lawrence playing quarterback. That was Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott as offensive coordinator. So it kind of shows that some of the things that we saw the past couple of years that people have been frustrated with have actually been there for longer than it appears.
Yeah, and it was just covered up by great quarterback playing, great wide receiver play, and perhaps the greatest running back to ever don a Clemson uniform in Travis Etienne. I will argue all day about that. CJ Spiller was great. I've got all of my favorites. Some great players come through there. Travis Etienne's the best I've ever seen. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there, dude. In fact, Nikki's really funny. My wife, if you don't know, Nikki also helps us with TigerNet. But she, since Travis Etienne has left, she will see a running back, doesn't matter who it is, Shipley or Maffa or whoever. She'll see them hit a hole and get tripped up, and she'll go, Travis would have scored. She'll lean over to me in the press box. She'll go, Travis would have scored on that.
And that was the thing.
Travis would have scored on that.
That was the thing Travis had. Even as a freshman, it was amazing with him how many times it looked like he was going to get tackled for maybe a loss, and then he turned it into a long run. I mean, it was uncanny how he could do that.
Yeah, and break tackles, and he was such a weapon in the receiving game. Really miss him, but I think Clemson has got a great tandem in Will Shipley and Phil Maffa. Phil Maffa is the kind of guy, I've said it before on here, I really wish that he could get 15, 20 carries a game, because he's one of those players that he's going to eat better. The more that he gets fed, he just needs those carries. Will Shipley, fantastic, great competitor. And then, part of what we saw in the spring game, how about Dominique Thomas, Quadzilla, Robert Newhouse Jr., whatever you want to call him, that little bowling ball, they list him at 5'9", and I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know that he's 5'9". I truly don't. But man, he proved that he could hit a hole. I don't think he's going to run away from anybody, but he had a couple of 20-yard gains, led every rusher with 61 yards, proven, maybe that he could be a capable third back in this offense. Keith Adams Jr., son of the termite, man, he had some big runs. So I think they're starting to develop some depth there. And, as has been proven, I don't know that Shipley's played every game. I don't think Moffa's played every game, and those guys are probably going to be needed at some point this year.
And I think that this spring game definitely helped quell some concerns we had, because with Kobe Pace leaving, you definitely lost some depth at running back. But yeah, I mean, I think Dominique Thomas is a great third option. I think Keith Adams is definitely coming along. I hope to see him stay with it. But I was definitely happy with the running back position and all. Another thing, we talked about Jake Brinkstool, a guy that we all knew that with Davis Allen leaving, he was going to be the new target for tight end. He was going to be our guy. What about Josh Sapp and Banks Pope? I mean, both those guys had outstanding games.
Yeah, how about Banks Pope? It's funny. You kind of hear names during the spring, and as much, look, I love Dabo, but sometimes he's given to a little bit of hyperbole at times. And I can remember a receiver that wound up with 19 career catches that Dabo said was going to be an all ACC wide receiver. So, but Dabo also told us about Hunter Renfrow, right? And said, hey, he's going to be great. Told us Greg Hugel was going to be a great kicker. Wound up being right on both. Chandler Catanzaro said he's going to be great. But this is a kid, Banks Pope, who's a walk-on, joined the team in 2021, went to AC Florida down in Columbia, played, I think defensive end, played right tackle down there before moving to tight end. This is a kid that was committed to play at Appalachian State before he decided to come to Clemson and become a walk-on. And, you've kind of heard about him a little bit, and now you go, hey, he actually looks like a viable candidate to get into that tight end rotation, and along with Josh Sapp. Josh Sapp's a guy you could see out there Saturday. He's a bigger guy. I think he's going to, once he really puts his mind to learning how to block, he's going to be a great blocker. And so now all of a sudden you go with Brenningstool and Sage Ennis, who had a nice tackle, but he got drilled by Kate Denhoff there, I think, in the second quarter. And I think he kind of got the breath knocked out of him. He came back to play. I don't know that he was 100%. And you go, hey, Banks Pope is in there. Josh Sapp is in there. All of a sudden, it's a pretty good-looking tight end room.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the big thing I took away from it, is there's definitely depth at tight ends, and I think they got a chance to show off a little bit because of the lack of the injuries at receiver. But I kind of wondered too, if this isn't kind of the opposite. We're talking earlier about how we've had some of these scheming issues for years now that was covered up by superior talents, covered up by T. Higgins, Trevor Lawrence, etc. If this isn't kind of the opposite, in the sense that we're seeing maybe good to average talent being able to take advantage of good play calling.
And I think that's probably one of the things that I'm most excited about Garrett Riley, in that he doesn't have that history here. He doesn't have that history with the Chad Morris offense that turned into the Clemson offense, that staleness that had kind of permeated, and you hear that the terminology has changed. And then perhaps the best thing that I heard all spring, one of the things that I was a little concerned about. Look, at any level, when you get to be a head coach or any position coach, man, there's a certain level of ego there, right? Would Coach Sweeney let him install his entire offense and just say, we're here to learn from you? Or would Dabo go, hey, you know what, but we do these things really well, so we've got to incorporate these things too. And from everything I've heard, Dabo turned the keys of everything over to Garrett Riley and said, teach us. And, one of the things we haven't talked about is the fact that Kyle Richardson, who's the tight ends coach, offensive analyst for several years at Clemson, then also, the head coach at Northwestern out in Rock Hill, he's an air raid guy. And he went down to southeastern Louisiana, as I got busted him for saying it wrong the other day in an interview session. He went down to southeastern Louisiana and learned it from Hal Mummy and Matt Mummy. Everybody will remember Hal Mummy, air raid system at Kentucky with Couch and some of those guys. Hal Mummy then went to New Mexico and did his thing, southeastern Louisiana. And they are all kind of Hal Mummy, Mike Leach disciples. So Kyle Richardson knows his offense, and he's like, hey, Mama, guess what? I'm home. Let's do this. And so Kyle said, yes, Dabo, let this entire offense be Garrett Riley's, and he's going to be a big part of it too. And so to hear that is very refreshing. And, I got a text message about, midway through the second quarter Saturday from a friend who's like, well, all we're seeing is the screens again. I don't like the screen game. Let's get rid of it. I don't like it. It's the same offense. And I'm going, yeah, again, I think that's more of a product of who's out on the field rather than what we're going to see later.
Absolutely. A little, just again, more of the vanilla. One thing we talked about last year was there were multiple games where the passing game just wasn't working, and the run game was, but Brandon Streeter, the offense just, said we wanted to try to get DJ going. Do you think that's going to be an issue? Because there's going to be at least one game, I imagine, where where running game is working, passing isn't. Are we going to, with us being more of an air raid team, do you worry about getting in that situation of being hard headed and not running the ball when it's working?
No, I really don't. I think that Garrett Riley has said repeatedly he understands what he has. And you look, last year, his back at TCU gained 1,400 yards, one of the top running backs in the nation. So I think he's committed to running the football. And then that's one thing that Kyle was laughing with me about back during our interview session was when he brought the air raid to Northwestern. Everybody was writing, well, it's a passing offense. They don't run the football. And he said, I did interviews and I wanted everybody to think that. I wanted everybody to think we're just going to throw the football all over the yard and then I'm going to run it down your throat. And I remember some of those teams that he had, and that's exactly what he'd do. He'd throw it a little bit and then he'd get you on your heels and then you just run it down your throat. I think that's what this offense is kind of going to look like.
I think I agree on that. And I think that'll be good. A thing that I'm excited to is, a lot of people don't know, but Garrett Riley was the first coach to offer Cade Klubnik when he was at SMU. And I think this is an offense that's really going to fit Cade perfectly. I felt like Cade had a pretty solid game. A lot of people talked about Cade doing what he did in the Tennessee game where he would drop back and take long sacks. I kind of wonder if some of that isn't a product too of it being two-hand touch for the quarterbacks. I'm not willing to get too worried about that right now because I think when it's full contact football, he's more likely to tuck and run than he was last year. So, but I think this offense is going to fit him like a glove.
I do too. And I'm glad you brought up Cade. We haven't really talked about him a lot. I thought that there were some interesting comments from DJ the other day. DJ, of course, now at Oregon State. And DJ was talking about the comfort factor that he has with the Oregon State coaches. And he said that now he feels like he can run drills. And if he makes a mistake, nobody spends some time, yelling at him. And I thought that was a very interesting comment because we had heard that, I think the head coach could be a little hard on DJ at times in practice. Everybody thinks, maybe that he was protecting DJ, but we had heard, and I think even Brandon Streeter said it, that there were times that he had to be kind of a go-between Coach Sweeney and DJ, that Coach Sweeney was hard on DJ. And so I think what you had was a quarterback who was so afraid to make a mistake, and he wouldn't take chances when it was time to take chances. And then it would get so bad, he would make the terrible mistake. It just became almost an untenable situation for him. Cade is the exact opposite. You can yell at Cade all you want to. You can scream at Cade all you want to, and he's still going to go out there and be what he is. And that is a scrambling, running, take chances quarterback. He's going to be a lot like Trevor. Remember Trevor, that great year that he had when he started out the year with, 6 or 7 interceptions in 3 games? That's what the great ones do. And they shake it off and they come back. And I think that's what's good about Cade is he can throw an interception on one drive and he's not going to go into a shell. He's going to come right back out and he's going to fun and gun it, and he's going to have a ball doing it. And that's going to be a big difference in quarterback play this year, because I think as much as I love DJ would make a mistake, and then he would become even more internal, more cautious, more guarded, not make the right reads, and then all of a sudden the offense is just slogging along. And it's not going to be that way with Cade. Cade's going to throw a pick, be like, okay, let's go again. He's like a reliever who, gives up a home run, comes back out the next night and shuts somebody down. And, I think that's going to be the fun part of this offense this year.
And I think the best example of that last year was the Syracuse game. I mean, DJ makes one mistake, that mistake turns into 2, it turns into 3. And that was just DJ's that when he was comfortable, when things were going well, it was great. I mean, we saw it in the Florida State game last year. When he has a good game, he has a good game. But when he makes a mistake, it really, you can tell it wears on him. Whereas Cade was very much kind of like, okay, we're down 20, we're down 20 points. We're going to try to see what we can do and come back. And it just seems to be more of that. He's able to roll with the punches a little more, which I think is going to be huge.
It will. And then, of course, I think it's going to be fun watching the dynamic with the 2 ultimate competitors out there in Shipley and Cade. Whereas maybe in the past couple of years, Shipley was a little bit reticent to take on that mantle of leader. There were other times when he wasn't, but now you got two barking alpha dogs out there, and it's just going to be fun. It really is.
What are we looking at right now with Cade's backup? Because I think going into the spring game, a lot of people had already put Vizina as QB2. Hunter Helms looked probably like the better quarterback on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Hunter has run as the number 2 quarterback all spring. Hunter's probably going to be the number 2 quarterback all next year. I think that, the plan for now is to redshirt Christopher Vizina. It doesn't mean we're not going to see Vizina in 4 different games, which would allow him to keep his redshirt. But Hunter's that old guy now. He's been around and he understands football. I understand that he has picked up this offense really well. We saw him out there. Hey, 2 quarterbacks had 2 interceptions apiece Saturday, and neither one of them was named Hunter Helms. And he had a really nice pass to Josh Sapp over the middle for a 20-yard gain there. Led a scoring drive. A guy that, I think you can trust in games. And, so he's going to be the number 2 guy. I think you're going to look at Paul Tyson. Once the season starts and you don't want to burn Vizina's red shirt, Paul Tyson could be a number 3 guy. Might be Vizina. Got Vizina in there. You got Trent Pierman in there. Trent, redshirted last year. So I think it's a really good room. But, I think there's a definite pecking order right now. Cade Klubnik, number 1, Hunter Helms, number 2. And then everybody else can fight over the other spots.
Starting to see a lot with Hunter Helms reminds me of Chase Bryce, just the guy who was kind of overlooked originally in the quarterback room, but I think it's just a solid quarterback and somebody that in an emergency you can trust. And that was what Chase Bryce was.
Well, yeah. And then Chase went out and proved that he could go elsewhere and play and maybe turning himself into an NFL player. And, I've heard that Hunter Helms has had opportunities to go other places, other schools, and maybe compete for a job. And the fact that he's, wanted to stay at Clemson, finish up, his degrees here, I think says a lot about his character. He loves Clemson and he loves his teammates. And, look, can he transfer right now? I think absolutely he could transfer out tomorrow and go find a place to play in a group of 5 school, maybe even a Power 5 school, and get an opportunity to start. Because I don't know that, with Cade Klubnik, there's really not going to be an opportunity here. But I think Hunter Helms is one of those solid guys.
I agree 100%. I think he's a solid guy. I think he's a good quarterback too, and I think that'll be a good guy to have on the depth. Let's flip over to special teams right now, because all spring I've heard that Robert Gunn is the heir apparent to BT Potter. Liam Boyd just comes out and kicks a 51-yard field goal. Nothing special,
How about Liam Boyd? And I actually wrote that in my story. Hey, if you're a Clemson fan, you've heard about Liam Boyd, raise your hand. Kid that spent time at IMG Academy, came to Clemson as a walk-on out of Asheville. But if you go, he's a Chris Saylor who had a kicking academy. He's a Chris Saylor guy, along with Robert Gunn. And there's a video of him on his Twitter hitting 4 consecutive 65-yard field goals. And he hit that 51-yarder like it was nothing. And putting kicks out of the back of the end zone. And Dabo Swinney says, yeah, it's a competition right now. So I think there's great competition there. Hunter, we still want, I want Jack Smith to come along because I really like the kid. He's a big dude and he can boom them. You watch him in pregame warmups and he's out there just bombing them. And then you get in the game and there's still that inconsistency. He told us, during the offseason that maybe there was a little bit of, nerves last year when he would get into games. And I think maybe even only appeared in one game, but he would get, in pressure situations. He would let the nerves get the best of him. He's a kid that can really come along. But I think Aiden Swanson cemented his spot as the starting spot punter. So I think Clemson's good there. Love the long snappers that Clemson has in Big Florenzo and Holden Casperson. I think they're solid there. Got a Holder and another Sweeney. By the way, Clemson has not botched a hold since before Will Sweeney was at Clemson. And Will was there 6 years. Drew held a year. You're going to have Clay this year, so no botch holds with the Sweeney kids. But the big competition is going to be a kicker.
I think so too. It's wild that we're now on our last Sweeney brother. This is Clay starting his freshman year, and then we're about 3 or 4 years away from the end of an era.
It really is, and it will be an 11-year era. How about that? If Clay stays the next 4 years, he doesn't have a COVID year, so boom, this is it. His clock is now ticking on 4 years. But with Will 6, and then the Drew with the 1, where he was the main guy, and then Clay now with 4, 11 straight years of Sweeney boys out there holding.
It's going to be a weird day when we have somebody else doing, that the first time that one of the non-Sweeneys messes up the hold is going to be like, all right, we got to find another one of them. See if Dabo's got any nephews or anything out there.
I think they've all already come through the school.
I think so too. I don't know that we've got any more left. So, and the last thing we talked about some, we had a lot of receiver injuries, but Hampton Earl had a really good game, I thought.
Yeah, you've got the 2 Hamps that I call them, Hampton Earl and Hamp Green, who just keep going out and plugging along and doing things. And, people tend to forget about them, but, they go out and they just kind of do things and make plays. And this is a kid that, he played, probably close to 70 snaps last year, came out on the field and you're like, okay, yeah, this guy can play. And guess where he's from? Of course, he's a Daniel High School kid. So just keeps kind of going out there and doing things. Not going to be a superstar, but provides some really valuable depth for the Tigers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there. So my big question now, we're done with spring practice. It's the second period of the transfer portal. We've seen some pretty big names from other schools go in. You got the defensive tackle from Georgia. You've got some other guys. Is Clemson going to use it or not?
Well, right now, Clemson is at 88 scholarships. And, of course, you can only have 85. And so at some point, Clemson has to lose 3 guys before they can even be ready to take the field against Duke. In fact, they can't even start practice with them in August if they have 88. So, they've got to lose 3 guys just to get back to even. And then they would obviously have to lose more. For me, if I look at a position where they could use one, it would be wide receiver. And I know that they have numbers there. And, but I take a look at wide receiver, and I know that there are people around the program that believe they really could use a wide receiver. But you can't just go get any wide receiver, right? Like, you got to go get somebody that's a dude. I love that word, dude. Learned it from Monty Lee. When you talk about somebody that's exceptional, I had a coach reach out to me the other day about a kid and said, hey, he's a wide receiver, and he would come to Clemson, and he's been playing ball in Tennessee at another school, and let me know if you think it'd be a fit. And I look at the kid and I go, Clemson's got 7 or 8 of those guys right now. If Clemson's going to go get somebody, man, they got to go get that guy who's looking to go to the next level, who is looking to be a star. But again, they've got to have some attrition there at some point. And I just don't see that wide receiver in the portal yet. But I do think that Coach Sweeney will look at it. If there happens to be room, and I know that people get all wound up when people say that they're leaving, and I've got some guys in mind that I think could make the decision over the next week or so to leave. And that would have to open up, some room, but that's what has to happen right now. Takes 3 just to get back to even, and then it would take 4 to get to the point to where you're ready to offer somebody. And I also know that Dabo's probably looking at it and going, hey, maybe Banks Pope deserves a scholarship. Maybe Liam Boyd deserves a scholarship. A couple walk, never know what he's going to think. Maybe they get down to 83 and he goes, hey, Banks Pope, you get a scholarship. Hey, Liam Boyd, you get a scholarship. We're back to 85.
And that's the thing. You want to make sure you're fair to those guys because they have absolutely worked hard. You can see it, and you can see that they have potential to be, stars. And so, yeah, I agree 100%. I don't know that, I think that you definitely, those are guys that if we do get under 85, they're going to be in competition for getting those scholarships. I agree with that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the way that Dabo operates. And, he's looked at the portal before. And there were some offensive linemen that he went after last year who decided to go elsewhere. So it's not like he's averse to using it, but it's got to be the right fit. Like everybody makes such a big deal about Florida State signing all these guys, and Texas getting so many guys last year, and they're just adding bodies to provide depth. Clemson's got depth. What they are lacking is a dude at wide receiver, and that's why it's got to be the perfect fit.
And I think, Dabo's system of rewarding guys with scholarships is why you see Banks Pope turn down Appalachian State to come play at Clemson. It's why Peyton Straco is not at a service academy. He's a walk-on at Clemson because there is that opportunity to be on scholarship at a top, 10 program. And that you have a coach that will give you that opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. That's part of why people love to come and play for Dabo.
Yeah. It's going to be a fun off season. Definitely wild that we're already through spring and starting to look ahead to summer. A couple of things we'll talk before we get out. Softball is still killing it. Had a rough go against Florida State, but other than that, I mean, swept South Carolina. Had that phenomenal game in Columbia where Valerie Cagle hits the go ahead bomb and then pitches, and it's kind of it's. I expect that this team. It would be shocking for me if this team does not make it to Oklahoma City this year.
Yeah, they to me have had a little bit of an offensive lull, and I think that really showed against Florida State. And I know that they have a lot of confidence going right now, but right now they're basically 3 games behind Florida State in the loss column because to be the number 1 seed in the ACC tournament, because now they have 4 ACC losses, Florida State just 2. But of course, Florida State owns the tiebreaker over the Tigers. And that Florida State team, man, has a lot of really good pitching. But this is a team that if they can host a regional, host a super regional, yes, absolutely could go right back out there and face Florida State out in Oklahoma City. And, that's a little bit of a point of contention in my household, is because I went to the College World Series with Clemson way back in 2010. And I said, man, if I can come out here once every 2 or 3 years and cover a College World Series, man, I'll be happy. And I think that's what's going to happen. And now Clemson hasn't been back in 13 seasons. And so I thought, hey, maybe with softball, I can go to another College World Series this year. And I look, and it's the same dates as Dabo's high school camps for recruiting, which, of course, is the lifeblood of any Clemson website. And so my wife is like, well, I'll just go to Oklahoma City. Well, of course you will. And I'll miss it again. But, yeah, definitely a team that's good enough to go. And I actually sent John Rittman a message the other day, and I said, can we just go ahead? Like, can I go ahead and give you some money? And let's build that statue for Valerie Cagle right now.
She's just something else. And it's just, a lot of people compare that home run against Carolina to Seth Beers from 2017, the being down to your last strike in Columbia. The thing she did that Seth Beer didn't, she then went out and pitched. It's just incredible what she's doing from the mound and the plate.
Yeah, it's funny that I talk to people all the time about her, and I go, is she maybe the most dominant player at a position or at two positions in Clemson history?
I think there's a good argument she is.
Well, no doubt, right? Like, she's second in the league in slugging percentage. She's first in the league in on-base percentage. She's first in the league in on-base and slugging percentage. She's probably top 10 in hits, but she's fifth in runs batted in. She is third in the league in home runs. Or no, now she's actually going to be tied for first. She's first in the league in walks. And then all of a sudden you look at it and you go, man, she's really good. And then you look at the pitching side of things, and she's right there with all of the leaders too. You go to the pitching side of it, and she's third in ERA. She's third in opposing batting average. She's fourth in innings pitched. She's third in strikeouts. And you go, so she's in the top 5 in so many categories, both offensively and defensively. How cool is that?
She's got to be one of the top candidates for the Player of the Year award. I don't see how she's not at this point.
Well, yeah, she's got to be the ACC Player of the Year. She has to be. And I know that Florida State has a lot of great players. And then, yes, National Player of the Year. She's going to be in that conversation.
We'll flip over the other diamond, but another guy, a guy who's doing similar to Valerie Cagle, that he's doing it from the pitching mound and the plate. Caden Grice has really come along as Clemson's Sunday pitcher.
Love Caden Grice. And, I thought that Caden's year last year went south during and after that South Carolina series. Dude probably saw 39 pitches from the Gamecocks in the series, and I bet 37 of them were breaking balls. And he got just out of sync. And, it's taken him a while, and I liked what I saw out of him early in the season. And now all of a sudden it's really starting to come together. He's staying through the baseball, driving the ball with power the other way. When he does that, he's a really dangerous hitter. And then, Monty Lee kind of hesitated to use him as a pitcher last year. Now all of a sudden he's coming in and he's pitching, and he's just kind of helped solidify the back end of that, starting rotation. And, all of a sudden this is a Clemson team that has knocked off a couple of ranked teams. They've won 2 ACC series in a row. Then they go up and play at NC State this weekend. This is a big week for them. I think that this is a team that is starting to find its way a little bit, right? And they've dug themselves a hole. There's no doubt about it. But they're right there with NC State. NC State's 8-9 in the league, and the Wolfpack 20, let's say 24-11. Clemson's maybe 21, 22-15. So, this is a very winnable series for them. And all of a sudden, if you can win this series and you pass NC State in the standings, you get past Notre Dame in the standings, all of a sudden, hey, you're knocking on the door of Louisville, which is 8-7 and sitting second in the ACC Atlantic. and you're starting to gain some confidence. This is an ACC that just doesn't have a lot of great teams. Man, Wake Forest is really good. They're probably the best team in the league. Virginia's really good, but then you have a lot of teams that are kind of like in that same talent level, and I think Clemson can join them. But now you just at this point, you have to start putting series wins together. Beat Georgia tonight, go up to to Raleigh, win 2 out of 3, and all of a sudden things are trending pretty much in the right direction. And this is a Clemson team that's had a really tough schedule. I mean, their RPI is way up there. Last I saw, upper 20s, lower 30s, somewhere in there, and they've already played a lot of their teams. And then next week they get Kennesaw State, and then they go to Boston College, which is ahead of them in the standings, and has done okay. And then they get to host Louisville at home. I think it sets up really well for them to start putting some series wins together.
And the other thing is Clemson's had to kind of make this run without their best pitcher, Ryan Ammons. He got hurt the week of the South Carolina series. We don't really know when he's coming back, but that will be, once you get him back in the lineup, that really adds a whole lot to what you can do.
Yeah, and again, I think guys are starting to find their roles, figure out what you can do with Ryan Ammons, and again, just start winning series and make sure that you're playing your best baseball at the end of the year. Because if you make it to the ACC tournament, who knows what can happen.
One thing I'm curious on, because I've got theories, but a few years back, Vanderbilt became really good at baseball, and there was always this talk in the SEC of them circumventing the 11.7 scholarships with different programs. We've seen a lot of private schools get really good. Wake Forest is one of the best. Boston College is now a top team in the Atlantic. What is going on that's made these private schools so good?
Well, when you're able to supplement scholarships, so like for Vanderbilt, what people don't get is that Vanderbilt has a large endowment that is in the billions of dollars. And so what they can say is, hey, if you are a baseball player, because or any student, because we're a private school, if you meet certain thresholds, if your parents make, say, less than $250,000 a year, then we can offer you an academic scholarship. We can pay for your schooling. So now all of a sudden 11.7 goes out the window. So now, whereas Eric Bakich is having to divvy up 11.7 scholarships among, really, let's just say the 27 or 28 main players, and people are getting a quarter scholarship or a third of a scholarship and maybe some book money, all of a sudden Vanderbilt's like, hey, we'll just pay your entire way. And so you're able to bring in better players, and you're able to bring in a lot of depth, and you're able to bring in some superstars and go, guess what? You're never going to have to pay a dime of tuition. And at a place like Clemson, out-of-state tuition is crazy high. And so you may go down into Georgia and you go, hey, come up to Clemson. Sorry, your out of pocket for your parents is going to be $27,000 this year. But we're going to give you a little bit of book money. We can help you out maybe with some NIL money. But yeah, you're still going to have to pay that because all I can give you is a fifth of a scholarship. Vanderbilt's like, hey, come get a Vanderbilt education, and your parents aren't going to play a dime, and we'll give you some NIL money. Now Wake Forest is being able to do some of the same stuff.
And that's what I was wondering. I figured that they were doing it, as somebody who knew a lot of people going who played baseball at Georgia Tech. I see how that kind of works, because in Georgia, there's the Hope Scholarship. So you give a kid, hey, quarter of a scholarship, but we also have state funds that will get you go for free. I mean, Clemson cannot compete at that point.
And it's been an uneven playing field for a long time, and it will continue to be a little bit uneven. But Clemson, I think, is starting to take some steps to rectify that. Some other things that are starting to happen. But yeah, these private schools, that's why Dallas Baptist has been able to be, pretty much a player now in NCAA baseball, because their kids can go for free.
It's just a fascinating money game, and as someone who loves college baseball, it's interesting to watch, because it's just so, there's so much that goes into it, because it's not like football where you have 85 scholarships. You've got to play, you got to figure it out. So Interesting stuff. Hopefully Clemson can kind of find ways to get competitive with that. But I think this team is really peaking at the right time. Well, folks, thanks again for joining us for TigerNet Podcast. Remember to stay tuned for all our great episodes as we continue this march through the summer and into fall camp. And we ask that you please like, subscribe, and review wherever you get your podcasts.
I feel like it's been very balanced. We're going to be very explosive in the air, very explosive in the run game. So, I mean, the dirt raid, I haven't heard that yet, but it sounds good.
This podcast is a production of Big Game College Football Network. For more information, please go to bgpodcastnetwork.com. For 24-hour streaming of all Big Game College Football Network podcasts, please go to biggamecfb.airtime.pro. All rights reserved.
Man, they've been asleep. What you talking about? Online.